an island, thousands of miles from anywhere. No allies, no army, no escape, just ocean in every direction, cold, gray, and endless. May 3rd, 1821. The man lying in this bed had once commanded the largest army in European history. He had rewritten the legal code of an entire civilization. He had brought empires to their knees and made kings beg for his mercy. Now he could barely lift his arm. He was 51 years old, and he had exactly 2 days left to live. The official cause of death? Stomach cancer. That is what history books reported for over 100 years. That is what doctors signed off on. That is what the world accepted and forgot. But in 1961, a forensic scientist analyzed a single strand of his hair. What he found inside that one strand of hair overturned 2 centuries of accepted history: arsenic, in concentrations that should not have been possible in a living person. The question was no longer how he died. The question was who put it there, and whether anyone ever intended to be caught. To understand what happened on that island, you need to understand what this man had been. Napoleon Bonaparte was born in 1769 in Corsica, a small Mediterranean island that had just been transferred from Genoa to France. He grew up speaking Italian. His family had no money and no political connections. By every measure that mattered in 18th century Europe, he was a nobody. He graduated from a French military academy at 16 and entered the army as a junior artillery officer. His accent was mocked. His height was exaggerated by enemies into a joke that lasted centuries. His ambition was considered inappropriate for someone of his background. None of it slowed him down. By the time he was 30, he had conquered northern Italy, signed treaties that stunned European diplomats, and begun a campaign in Egypt that rewrote the military and scientific understanding of the ancient world. By 1804, he had crowned himself Emperor of France. By 1810, he controlled France, Spain, Italy, the Netherlands, and half of Germany. 50 million people lived under his laws. His legal reforms, the Napoleonic Code, still shape the legal systems of over 40 countries today, including most of Latin America. The idea that all citizens are equal before the law, regardless of birth. That was Napoleon's contribution to the modern world. Then came Waterloo, June 18th, 1815. In a single day, everything collapsed. His army was destroyed. His empire dissolved. His allies abandoned him. The man who had terrified every monarch in Europe for 2 decades was finished before sunset. Within weeks, he had been stripped of every title, every territory, and every privilege, and shipped to the most isolated place the British could find on a map: St. Helena, a volcanic rock in the South Atlantic Ocean, 1,200 miles from the coast of Africa, 1,800 miles from South America. The nearest inhabited land was 700 miles away. There were no commercial shipping routes nearby. No way in without British permission. No way out at all. He would spend the remaining 6 years of his life there. He would never see Europe again. Longwood House. That was what the British gave him. A damp, decaying building on the windiest part of the island, surrounded by mist for most of the year. Mold grew on the walls. Rats moved through the floors at night. The doors did not close properly. Water seeped through the ceiling when it rained, and on St. Helena it rained constantly. The British governor, Sir Hudson Lowe, made sure the experience was as miserable as the law allowed. Napoleon's movements were restricted to a small perimeter around the house. His letters were opened and read before delivery. His servants were routinely questioned, harassed, and in some cases dismissed without explanation. The first years, Napoleon endured it with something close to dignity. He dictated his memoirs. He planted a small garden. He played chess in the evenings. He gave orders to a court that no longer existed because the routine kept him sane. But by 1817, something had shifted. He was losing weight at a rate his attendants found alarming. His legs swelled so badly that he had difficulty walking across the room. He complained of a persistent, dull pain in his right side, a pressure that never fully went away, day or night. His doctors attributed it to the island climate. They prescribed wine, warm baths, and rest. The pain worsened. By 1820, Napoleon rarely left his bedroom. He vomited every morning. His skin had turned a pale, grayish yellow that his valet described as the color of old wax. His hair, which had always been thick and fine, began falling out in quantities that alarmed everyone around him. He stopped eating. He lost interest in his memoirs. He stopped playing chess. He lay in bed for most of the day and stared at the ceiling. In January 1821, he told his valet Louis Marchand something that Marchand recorded word for word in his diary. "I feel I am dying, not from any one thing. I feel myself dissolving, piece by piece." Those were not the words of a man dying from cancer. Those were the words of a man whose body was being systematically destroyed from the inside. April 15th, he dictated his final will. May 3rd, he lost consciousness and did not regain it. May 5th, 1821, at 5:49 in the afternoon, Napoleon Bonaparte was dead. The official report said stomach cancer, complicated by a perforated ulcer. The world accepted it, moved on, closed the book. For 140 years, the file was closed. Nobody looked twice, until one man refused to stop asking a question that everyone else had forgotten. In 1955, a Norwegian dentist named Sten Forshufvud became quietly obsessed with something that no one else seemed to have noticed. He'd spent years reading every memoir and medical report written by the people who had been present at St. Helena. And when he laid the symptoms out in chronological order, the weight loss, the swollen legs, the vomiting, the skin discoloration, the hair loss, the burning pain in the extremities, the progressive weakness, the pattern was unmistakable to anyone with a medical background. This was not cancer. This was arsenic poisoning. Chronic, long-term, deliberate arsenic poisoning. Arsenic is one of the oldest poisons in recorded history. For centuries, it was called inheritance powder, because it was the preferred method for speeding up the transfer of family fortunes. It is colorless, tasteless, and nearly odorless. It dissolves in wine. It dissolves in food. And in the doses used to kill slowly, it produces symptoms almost identical to those of gastrointestinal disease. Here's what it does inside the body. Once arsenic enters the bloodstream, it disrupts the production of ATP, the molecule that powers every cell in the human body. Without adequate ATP production, cells begin to malfunction and die. The liver is the first major organ to show damage, followed by the kidneys. The lining of the stomach erodes. The peripheral nervous system deteriorates, causing pain, burning sensations, and progressive weakness in the hands and legs. In the final stages, the patient experiences severe vomiting, swelling in the extremities, jaundice, and total physical collapse. Every single symptom appeared in Napoleon's case. Every single one. In 1961, Forshufvud located a lock of Napoleon's hair that had been preserved by his valet Marchand as a personal keepsake. He arranged for it to be analyzed at a laboratory in Glasgow, using a technique called neutron activation analysis, one of the most sensitive methods available for detecting trace elements in biological material. The results came back. Arsenic concentration in the hair, 10.38 parts per million. The normal arsenic level in a human hair is 0.08 parts per million. Napoleon's hair contained 130 times the expected amount. But here's where the case becomes genuinely complicated. In 1982, a British scientist named David Jones examined samples of the wallpaper from Longwood House, samples that had been preserved in a museum. The wallpaper in Napoleon's bedroom was green, a deep, fashionable Victorian shade of green that was produced using a dye called Scheele's green, named after the Swedish chemist who invented it. The active chemical in Scheele's green is copper arsenite. In damp conditions, and Longwood House was extraordinarily damp, a common household mold called Scopulariopsis brevicollis metabolizes copper arsenite and converts it into trimethylarsine gas, a colorless, toxic vapor that is absorbed through the lungs with every breath taken in the room. Napoleon slept in that room for 6 years. 2 explanations, both supported by evidence, both scientifically credible. Either someone in Napoleon's inner circle was poisoning him deliberately, adding arsenic to his wine or his food in small doses over months and years. Or Napoleon Bonaparte was slowly killed by the wallpaper in the bedroom that the British government assigned him. And no one noticed until 140 years after his death. No one has ever been formally charged. No confession was ever found. No conclusive evidence has ever identified a specific individual. The arsenic was real. The levels were lethal. The symptoms match the mechanism precisely. What remains unanswered, and may never be answered, is whether a hand placed that poison deliberately, or whether the building itself was the weapon. What this case tells us is something that forensic science has confirmed again and again throughout history. The human body is an archive. It records everything that happens to it, in the bones, in the teeth, in the hair. Long after the mind has gone quiet and the official documents have been filed away and forgotten. A single strand of hair, sealed in an envelope for 140 years, cracked open one of the greatest unsolved medical mysteries in history. The body remembers. It always does. If you made it this far, you already know what to do. Subscribe. The next case is already waiting, and I promise you, it is worse than this one.